No, actually, I have not received your presentation, and I don't really have a spam. So,
okay. Oh, okay, okay. I have sent it again. Don't know.
just give me a minute.
Oh, it says couldn't be delivered. The domain name
Okay.
dsu-edu.in, right? Dean-CEE.
Dean-CE@dsu.edu.in.
Oh, dot DSU dot is it? Not dash.
No, dot.
My mistake.
So it's not PSU, sir.
D, Delta.
Yeah. Dayanand Sagar, yes.
Yes. Great. So we're getting a rapid climb in numbers, so we'll give it a couple of minutes.
So it is DEAN.
Yes.
Dash CEE.
Yes.
At DSU dot
edu.
.in. Okay. Let's hope this time we are lucky. I have sent it again.
Right. I think we should start. Can we, sir?
Yeah. I'm fine. Absolutely.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everybody,
Good afternoon.
and thank you for being here. Welcome to Mr. Nag Bhushan Mysore, and I will briefly introduce him. Also, my faculty colleagues who are there on this platform to attend this discussion, as well as all students who are here attending, both from engineering as well as the master's program in management, MBA and executive MBA. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I would like to introduce Mr. Nag Bhushan. But before that, this discussion is brought to you by BITES Bengaluru, that is Board for IT Education Standards, and the Dayanand Sagar University of Bengaluru. And he is going to speak on many cues to success. IQ is only one of them. Briefly about Mr. Nag Bhushan. As a mechanical engineer from SJCE Mysore, he has sought to add value to the companies he has worked over the last 4 decades. His efforts have largely been in the area of indigenization, vendor management, manufacturing, engineering, management education, and business excellence. The Tata Group, where he spent most of his working life, has helped him to shape his understanding of desirable characteristics for modern-day organizations. These include multi-stakeholder orientation, customer focus, long-term strategic thinking, systematic approaches, employee engagement, innovative mindset, and management by fact. During his career, he has had the privilege to study many organizations and to help them discover their true potential and strength. To briefly give you an idea about what he's going to speak about today, and I quote, "It is easier to list out what a success mantra is not than what it is. Surely it is not a monotone, neither is it a standard formula nor a predictable set of behaviors. It is an ever-changing notion steeped in complexity, needing ingredients from numerous dimensions of life. While education, which enhances our intelligence quotient, is an unarguable starting point, youngsters need to be made aware of the demands of a dynamic world in aspects such as emotional, social, spiritual, moral, and adversarial dimensions. While most of the mastery comes with experience, it serves well for them to know the possibilities of these paradigms. One of the best ways is to seek it out from those who have faced them and learn from their successes and failures. And we have a very eminent speaker here today, Mr. Nag Bhushan, who with his many years of experience will be able to articulate this very well. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Nag Bhushan. So we look forward to hearing you talk on the subject, please.
Thank you very much, Nagaraj. Very kind of you. And my privilege to be here on this platform, interacting with young mindsets, youngsters who are going to shape the country in the future. And it's my privilege to share whatever I can in the time that we have, so that a little bit of value is added to their personalities. So essentially, I have a presentation to assist what we are discussing. It's about 30 odd slides. So we have 45, 50 minutes, a minute or half. It's not necessary that we have to go through all the slides. The presentation will be with you where you can refer to it whenever. But more importantly, it's important to discuss the concepts that underpin whatever I'm trying to say. These are largely centered on youngsters, the students. I was a student in the early 80s, 70s, and life is a learning path, and still a student when I have retired from service. So learning is something that never ends. So it's only the person has to keep up the penchant for learning throughout the life. Having said that, I just want to begin by the title, which says many cues to success, essentially saying there are many cues to success and IQ is only one of them. And we need to serve up many others as we pass into our future. So how many cues have we all stood in? Numerous, isn't it? Starting from the first queue in your school bus, were to pick you up from your school, from your home, to your subsequent college days, standing up in the queue for an application form, or when you go to an airport, or for in future you're going to stand in queue metaphorically for your employment and so on and so forth. So the queue here essentially means that it supports equal merit. Everyone standing in the queue has the same credentials, so we should respect that and enhance our own personalities so that we are that much more valuable to whoever is wanting to listen to us or extract value from us. So the queue here is standing for whatever we see in the picture, but I want to emphasize on the various cues that we will talk about in the academics, the intellectual quotient that we are all used to. We are supposed to face a test and they will give a number, 150, 180, and so on and so forth, and that's extremely important. But besides that, for success in life, we need so many other cues. You need to stand in queues as you progress in life. So let's take a quick view of it. Many of the things that I say, you will know either directly or intuitively. But the value of this presentation is that it has been packaged in a manner that we can look at it in a short period of time. So I have a few questions to ask. I don't know if I can open up is there an opportunity for you to say something on the chat window?
Yes, there is generally. I would recommend that students
Okay.
ask their questions on chat, but
Okay.
they can't unmute themselves.
Okay, fair enough. So we will go by that, no issues. So here in this slide, as we see, there's a hen, there's a bird, and when we look at it, our mind gets into science, intellectual aspects of ornithology. We think of Dr. Salim Ali, who is a noted expert on bird and bird science, and so on and so forth. That is how we start thinking when you look at this bird. So you can say our IQ is triggered. But if you take a slightly distant view of the hen, of the bird, you will see two kids looking at the bird. Suddenly, our IQ will start tilting towards EQ, emotional quotient. Now, the two kids could be from your own family, it could be from the neighbors, wherever. So it's just not that the bird is there, it's that two kids are looking at it. So there's an emotion to it. There's a metaphysical understanding of the picture. If you go further, it's essentially the same picture. Now you can see the same two little kids looking at the bird through the window, but this time you see that there's a much bigger picture. So there's something called a society. It's not the only house, there are many other houses. And the bird is not alone, you have other farm animals. So you start becoming aware of a larger part of the society. So you can say, you're getting into some sort of a social quotient arena. If you move further up, it's still the same picture. Now I'm just zooming out. Suddenly we realize that whatever we are seeing is not real, it's just a set of toys. And suddenly our mind will say, oh, after all, we are humans, we are mortals, and our spiritual angles will start coming into the picture. So we get into a spiritual quotient. and so on and so forth. We can keep going like this. Ultimately, it's a set of toys. This could be you trying into taking a little bit of relaxation, and the much larger picture of life, and so on and so forth. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is what we see and what we make out of what we see is a function of our perspectives. It's a function of the context through which we have gone through. Now, what was just a little bird, as we keep expanding and zooming out in life, we get to know more and more about what constitutes our challenges. Like they say that when you want to understand the problem, you have to zoom out. You cannot restrict yourself to one perspective. But when you want to solve a problem, you have to zoom in, because action has to occur at the smallest area of work. So essentially, it's all about perspectives. When we start, we have a narrow perspective, and then we learn from siblings, brothers, parents, teachers, sisters, colleagues, and so on and so forth, and we broaden our perspective and thereby become much more all-round personalities. So each of these perspectives can be called as a quotient. I was just looking into the dictionary, and of course, all of us look into the Google as well. Believe me, any word, any letter you take from A to Z, there's a quotient for it. If there's no quotient, you can actually prepare one. It will be sellable, valuable, and it will be understandable. For example, A, an adversity quotient is in use somewhere. You take Z, there's something called zest quotient. That means what is the amount of zeal and zest you have in life? It's possible to measure it. So you have quotients from A to Z, anywhere in between. We all know I, we all know social quotient, and so on and so forth. So in this short presentation, let's look at it, take a breezy tour of it, so that you get a feel of all that. As I said, you know it in some way, but as you step into the big world of in the industry, you will be required to do more and more of it by systematically acquiring knowledge and skill. So this picture is trying to differentiate the same thing. Let's look at this. I hope you are all able to see the slide I'm projecting. It says life is all about perspectives. Am I right? Are you able to see this?
Yes,
okay,
we can.
Okay, I presume, fine. So what is this so-called perspective? Almost all of us in the engineering colleges would have done engineering drawing, orthogonal projection, isometric projection, and so on and so forth. You also have done perspective projection, showing a 3D object on a 2D surface. If you look at the first part of it, it says you have a horizon, which is a line, and you have a picture plane, which is a point, and we get to know a certain set of things about life. But as we grow, we are not happy with just a single line of horizon. We want multiple angles. The horizon becomes an arc. So you are able to get more angles. And the perspective point becomes a perspective plane or a picture plane. So you're able to see more things about life than what you were seeing earlier. And of course, the highest is when you have a solid angle, when your picture plane is like a sphere, and everything that life has, you are able to understand and appreciate. And this is an extremely important picture to keep in mind, that what it appears is not always the same. If you just change your perspective, change the angle a little bit, or be empathetic and go to the other side of what you're looking at, life will be different. And whoever can understand the multiple perspectives about life can generate better solutions, long-lasting value in life. So essentially, what we are saying is, various perspectives that that we are looking at can be called as a quotient. Every perspective can be called as a quotient. And in marketing, people say perspective is reality. In reality, reality could be different from perspective. But what we think of a person is what drives activities around the person. So perception is extremely important, which is driven by the perspectives we generate, which are essentially the various quotients that we are briefly going to explore. Yeah, this is just a picture of what I said earlier. A to Z, you will have a quotient to look at. The latest one is the digital quotient you see on the right margin. Everything in life is now digital. Ever since the Aadhaar has enveloped the country, the entire social security is going to be driven by digital means, and we know it all. So I'm not going to go deep into it, but essentially to say that what you see on the left-hand side is complexity. This is life, and the life needs to be met with multiple, perspectives, and we need to develop that. So let me have this picture on the screen, which here is a warrior. For many of us, he is Lord Ram, but essentially he is finding the way to truth, and he has a quiver, and the quiver has so many arrows, and you and I know that every arrow has a purpose. The arrow, there's a difference. There's a stroke that we need to deliver is different for different folks. Be it cricket or anywhere, depending on how the ball is delivered, the stroke has to be matched and customized. So you cannot pre-plan everything and then say that this is going to be my response. We should have the ability, agility to quickly understand which of my quotient needs to be the predominant one and deliver our responses accordingly. So let me take a minute each on 3 or 4 quotients, just to highlight its elementary importance. The first one to my mind is a communication quotient. We are what we speak. We are what we write. We are not what we know. Unless we write what we know. We are not what we feel unless we write what we feel, or we say or communicate what we feel. The communication can be verbal, non-verbal. It can be your eyes that speak. If you are kind to a person, your eyes will show. So communication is the skill number 1 for the corporate, for the industry that you work in, when many people come together to deliver value. And that is a huge universe. So communication is all about reading, writing, expressing, anything else. If you look at the left-hand side of it, one way to say is, I will talk to you. No, it has a certain level of maturity. From there, we need to graduate. And the same thing can be said when we say, let's converse. The words are different, but the meaning can be the same. But you look at the composition of the words, let us converse means you're providing an equal status for the other person. Whereas in the previous one, whether advertent or inadvertent, the other person may think that you are speaking from a position of strength. A much superior version of this could be, let us speak to jointly explore. How you can communicate the same thing at multiple levels of maturity. The industry needs it. The job that you are going to seek needs it. It is the skill number 1 as per me. People who are able to communicate well are the ones who are going to be successful to a large degree. So that is so far as the content is concerned. Essentially trying to say that every day we need to add to our vocabulary. at least one word a day. Use it, get the guts to use that extra word, the new word with your friends and family, and get accustomed to it. And when you go to work, it will be very useful. The second part I have chosen to talk about communication is the tone. You and I know, we have lived in life, that there will be numerous tones. It can be horrendous. It can be humorous. It can be cheerful. It can be light. It can be witty. So these are the skills you need to develop, and you already have it, but you need to nurture it and then sharpen it so that you know exactly when to use what, and thereby be that much more valuable. The third one is the aspect people call as modulation. I'm not saying that communication is only this, but I just chosen to speak about these three. You see a sentence here: moral education is a solution to undesirable social behavior. Now we can read it in many ways. Suppose I say moral education is a solution to undesirable social behavior. So I'm emphasizing on the word solution. So perhaps I'm a social scientist wanting to transform something and emphasizing the word that I bring maximum value, solution. So while the sentence is the same, depending on how much of emphasis you want to give on which word or which set of words will describe your intention. People can make out like this, that what is it that now you want to do. So this is just for you to explore as you progress in life. Let me move to the next one. Humor. Perhaps our college days has a maximum humor, and all of you are far better than me in humor, I can make out. But don't lose it. You keep it with you, because that's going to be really, really valuable. Here, I'm going to narrate an incident where I was a personal witness. And Mr. Ratan Tata, all of us know, was invited to receive the Deming Prize in India, given by one of the institutions in India. And he was called up the stage, and then we all know him, he's very self-effacing. He just took it. And then he came to the mic to say that I'm feeling like $1,000 parrot. Naturally, he has to explain what does it mean. So he said, look, once I went to a market where birds are sold. I asked someone, how much does this bird cost? They say $10. What can it do? Oh, well, it can imitate you and so on and so forth. Oh, wonderful. What about the next one? No, it's $50. What can that do? Well, not only can it imitate, it can even tell you what to speak. So like that, 50 became 100, 200, 400, 500. The $500 parrot can even do programming. The R programming or the Python. So he was pretty impressed, he was saying that. And ultimately he came to one single parrot which was in a cage. He says, how much is that? They said it's $1,000. That's the highest priced parrot we have. Okay, so what does it do? The shopkeeper says, look, I don't know what it does, but the rest of the parrots call this parrot the boss. So in his very self-effacing style, he says, I am the $1,000 parrot. I don't know anything. It's the people in the Tata group who have made. So if I'm being celebrated today, it is because of my people. No, that was his honesty, his simplicity and humility, whatever. So all I wanted to say is, if an icon like Mr. Ratan Tata can demonstrate humor to this degree, you and I should really pursue that path and try to be as humorous. There's a time for everything. We should be humorous at the time when it demands humor. It means cracking fun at oneself, thinking less of oneself, not oneself as less. There's a great statement. We should have the sagacity to accept humor. When somebody cracks a joke on us, we should be able to smile. It's a great skill. If we don't have the skill, we will always be angry at work. We should have the courage to use humor. We should have the ability to hold attention during humor, using humor. That's what I meant here. And protecting the honor of others when we. It doesn't mean that we should, demolish the credentials of a person. Humor has its own sacred position, and we should understand that and try to use it. Social quotient. This is a nice one. I can never forget this. I remember me and my friend were to go to Korea once for some office work. And we were very proud that belong to Business Excellence Group. And normally, when you say business excellence, the purpose of it is change management. Change management is understanding the nature of change, the pace of change, accordingly changing our processes, business activities, products, portfolio, and so on and so forth, so that we are one step ahead of the chain that is around us. So somebody asked us about what we are doing. They said we are in change management. Of course, we had not done any great study about South Korea and their social life and so on and so forth. And people there were all, what should I say, baffled, including the president of the company. He quietly asked, "Are you here to change the management?" No, it was very funny at that moment that they thought that we had gone from India to change the management of the company in Korea, whereas actually we were thinking we are here to look at change management as a philosophy. So we should understand the social environment that we are into, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and accordingly make adjustments to the manner we come across to each one of them. And perhaps the last question I would like to speak before we get into a much broader subject, it's about the financial quotient. Perhaps after the communication quotient, I will place the maximum weight on financial quotient. In this session, you don't need to know everything that is written here. And also there's much more than this that needs to be written than what I have written. But over a period of time, we should understand what is the nuance. Profit and loss we understand. But it does not mean that if a company is making profit, it has a great future. It does not mean. You have to look at the net worth of the company. No, you have to look at the debt of the company. You have to, even if they are all good, you have to look at which industry it is in. Is the industry growing? Is the product of the industry has a future? Is the industry going to be demolished by an emerging technology? None of us want to work in a typewriter industry today, right? So there is a whole lot of knowledge, whole lot of things that we need to know in what is called as a financial quotient. And when you get into your roles, whatever they are, tech companies, service companies, manufacturing companies, always try to increase your financial quotient. This is available. You can converse with people who know, you can read, whatever. But there's difference between one word here and the other, given the context. So I'll move. I have already spent half of my time. Since I said A to Z, there are questions. Which one shall we pick up for this 1 hour discussion? So I just picked up around 11. Why 11? The cricket team is 11, the hockey team is 11, so just a number. So what are these? Very quickly, if we have great reasoning ability, we know we can use information and logic, it is intelligence quotient, right? And we talked about data, digital, we talked about communication, emotions. Understanding emotions without being expressed in words is extremely important. Half of the world we see is unexpressed, but it doesn't mean that if it is unexpressed, It is not real. It is, but people either don't want to speak about it, or they are afraid, or they are culturally or disoriented, whatever. So we need to understand what is not spoken, which are essentially emotions, the body language, the facial expressions, the tone, and so on and so forth. Very important for us to understand that. Social, yes, knowing when to talk or listen. Uh, Spiritual, extremely important, because the purpose of living uh, comes through the spiritual quotient. I hope I'm not complicating this for you more than what already it is, because life is a complex entity. You need to look at the slices. Any company that you join will have what is called as a vision. So the spiritual quotient that way becomes real. Now, some company wants to be the least cost producer, somebody else wants to be the largest producer. So that is a vision, and the vision comes from this overall spiritual belief that we will achieve what we want to achieve if we really put it down and then focus our efforts around that. Adversity. We will face adversity. We are facing adversity, and it will continue. But not losing heart, taking them by the stride, moving ahead. If someone has that tenacity, that person has a great adversity quotient. We spoke about humor. We spoke about people. We need to like people. If you're working in a social setup, we cannot be on our own. Uh, we need to like people. We may not like everything about the person, but there are at least some things that we can like about each person. And when we like a person for a few things, we should have the ability to ignore the rest of it. Then only you can be a great player. There's something called renunciation quotient. That means, are we willing to lose? Is a loss fatal? If you lose a cricket match, is it the end of the life? No. If we don't get an order that we are looking for, is it the end of the life? Should we lose our enthusiasm? No. So there are many things that we need to learn and demonstrate. And the financial quotient we spoke about. Yeah. Now, I'm just pausing this. Take a look at the inspiring personalities. The slide is only this small. There are millions of people who have inspired and are inspiring us. But when you look at them and compare it with some of the things that we have discussed just now about the various quotients, for example, uh, the name that is all upmost in our minds, say Virat Kohli, the captain of the Indian team. When you look at him, um, which of the things come to your mind? Does he have the highest digital quotient and highest intelligence quotient? Not necessarily. But he is successful. That means, incidentally, Virat Kohli has the maximum followers on Instagram, 100 million. If I open an account in Instagram, 5 people will follow me. So that is his power. Now he is influential. People want to follow him. So there is a aura around him that he has created, because of which he has that. Of course, he is intelligent. He has understanding of digital to some degree, but not to what we want. He may not know SAP and Oracle. Doesn't matter. He has humor, so on and so forth. If you look at Vishwanathan Anand, the first thing that comes to our mind is that he must be very intelligent. His IQ must be very high, surely. But that doesn't mean that just because he has a high IQ, he can let go of others. No, he speaks brilliantly. He has a great communication quotient. He has a spiritual way of looking at things. You when you listen to what he says in conventions and things like that. Renunciation. He has lost many games. He has lost just by one single move many championships, but still he comes back to play the next game. No, he knows how to treat failure. You see the very famous Jaggi Vasudev here. No? as per me, he has the highest communication quotient. Nobody can explain things as well and as emphatically as he does. No, that is my take. No, your take would be different. So the purpose of this is that when people, uh, when we look at people, they're all known for certain predominant quotients, um, but they also have others which support their main strengths. The spiritual quotient of Swami Vivekananda. Um, you have Mahatma Gandhi, who's perhaps a combination of many things. You have Atkinson, who is that Dr. Bean, Mr. Bean, and all humor and so on and so forth. So just to give a little bit of practical orientation that whatever I'm saying is real. Okay, to get all these skills very quickly. You can get it while you're studying in the university. You can get it outside the university. You can get them for your professional skills and life skills. So life skill is far that much more than what we call the professional skills. So while this is most normal, you can get it from anywhere else as well. The financial quotient is something you need to get from everywhere. You need to read the Economic Times often. You need to look at the financial news of the world quite often so that you're not left in the queue far behind when you're doing your moves in your future. Now, why do we need so many queues? Is a question, very important question. Can I just not be a good student and know the entirety of thermodynamics and then join a power company and be an expert in that for my entire life? No, not really. It's not possible because there's a lot of intertwining of everything in life today. There may be humor in this. To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if I'm an expert in thermodynamics, I like thermodynamics. It's not against thermodynamics. But if I'm only good at that, for me, every problem will look like a thermodynamic problem. As against, different stroke for different folks, depending on what is the nature of the problem or the nature of the opportunity, we have to use the most appropriate skill. So in some way, a quotient is a skill. All of us want to be multi-skilled. And you can look at it that way to convince you further. So that's the point. The question of how many quotients should we follow? Is there an end to it? And so on and so forth. Just remember the kitchen. Your mother would prepare very nice dishes for you every day, day in and day out. It has everything, right? But in the right balance. A sweet is not better if you add more sweet to it. There's something else that every dish needs, and life is like that. So you need to discern, understand. You have the ability to understand what is needed and accordingly add it to your respective response. So there are a few more slides. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me just pick up one. If there's an imbalance, suppose I have great IQ, but I have low EQ, emotional quotient. I don't understand people, their feelings. No, I care a damn for the way they speak. No, I'm not sensitive to the words that they are saying. Then if I'm a manager with that type of profile, I will be saying more and more of, hey, you look, it's your duty, you do it. It is written there, don't you understand? Everyone is fine, why are you having a problem? No, that will be my nature. That will the typical manager that I will represent. On the other hand, if I have a good IQ supported by a good EQ, I will understand who is saying what. Why is he saying? Is the person who is not able to do a job under personal stress. Is there a family problem? Is there a health issue? No, is there anything else that's troubling the person? Depending on what I perceive around that, I'm able to suitably modify my responses. So I will understand the context, my relative strengths. Not everyone can be great at everything. The best manager is the one who knows the strength and gives the work that needs that strength, rather than testing everyone with everything. Respecting diversity, that means certain people may not do certain things, which is okay. We should have that mindset to accept, because everyone has their own individuality, and focusing on effectiveness and not just efficiency. So I will be leaving these slides with you. You can look at it at your leisure. There are a few more. There's not much time to go through all this. There is where growth and sustenance, high and low, is mapped. Leading and guiding, visionary, and things like that. Intellectual quotient and people's quotient are being compared. So I would rather leave it there. But this slide, if a person has all this high, he or she is likely to be empathetic, an expert, prudent, visionary, humane. Whereas a person who is not having this, the person is likely to be theoretical, raw, short-sighted, and so on and so forth. So the choice is us. We have to choose. We cannot be always on the top, but we should not be below the average line. Next question is, how do we develop this? IQ, the most important of things, we should know the concepts. Why does a motor move? It's a concept we should understand. The details can come later. The conceptual understanding is very clear. That's what your professors, your teachers, and others try to make you understand. How do we get digital quotients? Problem definition has to be correct. Application of data science is not the first thing. Understanding the problem is first. Then suitable data technique can be applied. Communication, we should understand the 5W, 1H, they say. The 5W is why, where, why, who, what, when, and 1H is how. So if we get a fair understanding of why we are speaking, what we are speaking, to whom, when, and where, and how do we speak, our right is important. So, so I will leave this here to go to the next slide, which is the sources. And to my mind, the primary source for many of your questions is your teacher, your professor, your lecturer. You're the one who handles you in a class, communicates to you with great zeal and great passion. Just don't go by what is visible. Just understand what is not visible also. The manner of speaking, the emphasis on what is being said are very, very important. So the best thing that you can learn is from your seniors in college, your professors, and your elders at family. Besides that, you can learn by reading books. Every book you read, it ages you by 1 year. So instead of spending 1 year and understanding life, you can read a nice book and become emotionally 1 year older, while physically you are the same. There are many things. You should watch programs where discussions on current topics are being held. How do the experts speak? And so on and so forth. You should read national, international magazines. For example, the Time magazine, when it talks of sustainability, it's the way they condense so much of meaning into simple sentences is really important. We spoke about the Economic Times and similar such finance-centered
media, you should read the editorials more carefully, because editorials are crafted after much thinking, whereas a news article is just written the way we speak. So editorials are a great source of refined perspectives. Whether you agree with it or not is secondary, but at least we will know what are the different sides of life. So there are numerous ways over and above what you already have. You're all privileged to be studying in your colleges, privileged to be having experienced and wise teachers teaching you what you are learning. You can supplement it by many of these sources. Okay, in the last 10 minutes or so, am I okay on time? In the sense, if I close in next 10 minutes, is that okay?
I think that should be fine.
Or
But I
you want
would
to cut it down?
I would suggest about 5 minutes or so.
5 minutes.
The
Okay.
5-6.
So okay, 5-6 minutes. I will end wherever I am, so that we can have a set of questions if there are any, and we can end it. So you may ask, did whatever I have said so far, is it theory, or do people really care for it? Is it a practical? Does it have a practical side of it? When you come to industry, there's something called Belbin profile. Some of you may be asked to go through it. Now, the Belbin profile says that there are 9 different profiles that anybody can fit into. It doesn't mean that if I'm a plant, I'm not others, but there's one dominant profile of mine. A plant is a creator of idea, an evaluator is strategic, very sober. A specialist is self-starting, dedicated, but single-minded, and so on and so forth. So a Belbin profile is a fantastic manifestation of what the subject that we are speaking, that we should respect multiple diverse skills that people have, and so on and so forth. So this is just to prove that whatever we have said, or I feel that whatever we have said so far is also in the real practical world. Some of you, or more of you, may have heard of the great innovation creativity thinker called Edward de Bono. And one of his methods, he has more than 30-40 tools. One of this is called the 6 hats thinking. Some of us are like white hat. Now we are more interested in facts and figures, numbers. If numbers don't communicate what they are trying to say, then we don't believe them. No, we are white hat. Some people are black hats. That means we try to find a problem in everything that's being said. We are like lawyers. Where do I catch the opponents? Some of us are like yellow hats. We see everywhere optimism, like a sunflower. Some of us are green, and so on and so forth. When we say this, it doesn't mean that we are only one hat, but one particular hat at a given point in time is predominant. Similarly, when you work in teams, you will have people with multiple hats, and we need to understand it when we do our meetings, take decisions, and do our teamwork. MBTI is another profile provider of people, and I would rather leave it here for you to go through it at your leisure. It's very similar to the Belbin that we spoke about. Some companies use this, while some others use it. Okay. This is the end note. So when we have a good set of cues, if there are 50 cues possible, at least we should have 20-25. And that 20-25 should be balanced. We cannot, in cricket, you cannot drive a ball which is short on the leg side, right? So we should know which skill to use when. Very important. That's called the balance. So for an individual, if the cues are balanced, then the person is likely to be called practical. There's great clarity. The person works for consensus, is inclusive, and can manage VUCA. VUCA may be new to you. VUCA essentially means it's a volatile world. It's an ambiguous world. It's a complex world. So you can't really expect stick and span, clickety clock things at work. There will always be chaos. So when there is chaos, if we can manage the chaos rather than being distressed, then we have a good balance. But when we have a team which has a good balance, the team has great harmony. People teach each other skilling, multi-skilling, improvement. Work is improved. This week's work is better than last week, and so on and so forth. They are results focused, and they are a high performance team. So if they don't have a balance, even though they have the quotients, then what you see on the right hand side are more likely to be the manifestations of such entities. So that's where we come to. Thank you for this great opportunity. I'm sorry this is not a two-way platform. It is, but given the time and given the context, it may not have been possible. I would have wished to speak half of what I spoke and listen to what you would have said, but maybe at a future date we have an opportunity. So I stop here for any questions and answers or comments. Let me say a few things before we come to this. You will face numerous situations of Q&A. Joseph, now today you may be having a question all right, but tomorrow you have to answer a question. So some of the things that help in answering this, taking up this QA is first we should remove that onus of having to know everything. So there may be many questions for which we may not find answers. My answer may not be the right answer. Maybe your answer and my answer have to be fitted to make a third answer. Right? So we should look at it like a team in a sporting manner. So, so over to you, Nagaraj. Kindly.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nag Bhushan, for that wonderful talk. And there are a couple of questions. One is from my colleague, Professor Anant Popli, and he says, does development of one quotient depend on the other? For example, can spiritual quotient be developed independent of other quotients?
Yes and no. Because we belong to this land and spiritual is so much close to our day-to-day life, it's quite possible that spiritual can be understood, but to attach meaning to our understanding of spiritual quotient, we need the other quotients.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Right. Okay. So I have a question on that, so that I'll wait, and then we have Dr. Suresh who asks, in a world that is rapidly moving towards digitization, you have robotics, and then now they're talking about artificial intelligence. What are some human capabilities that you think are important for the future?
Fantastic. So, leaving aside the cues because it's just a vocabulary we used here, in my mind, empathy is something that the robot will take ages to learn. Any amount of programming will always be short for a robot to look into the eyes and feel for the other person. So I would say the softer skills of being empathetic to another human being is something that will remain outside the robotics for a long time to come.
Okay. Also, going through your lecture, I seem to think that a quotient that was probably not mentioned directly was cultural quotient.
Yes.
Our understanding. So you briefly alluded to your experience in South Korea
Yes, yes.
as a probably as a cultural manifestation
Absolutely.
of experience.
Absolutely.
So how important do you think is an ability to understand culture? And I think a lot of youngsters don't get it that culture can vary from organization to organization, and
Correct.
they need to look at a positive culture when they go out to work
Absolutely.
rather than just money. And you come from an organization which has a great culture.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, my mantra would be to discover the culture that we are going to be in and first belong to that. Because trying to belong to a different culture other than where we are in and wanting to change this culture is not a given. We have to be within the system that we want to change. Because as soon as we are different from the major culture, then there's a line in between. So I become a tutor, somebody becomes say, why should I listen to you, and so on and so forth. So we should own the culture that we are with a belief that whatever culture we have is improvable. Culture is not imported. Culture is largely evolved. It's unlikely to be an outcome of a revolution. It has to be an evolution, step by step, understanding the root causes of why we behave the way we behave, and attending to those roots. And culture change is a generational change. That's why it's so difficult to difficult to beat long-standing companies because the products can be imitated, but the culture of the people cannot be.
Very nice. I think that's a fantastic example of why companies that have a legacy seem to be so much better
Yes.
to work in than say companies which are more recent. Although there is energy and excitement in more recent companies, the startup culture and so on and so forth.
Which is also important. That's another flavor of life which the life will benefit from, but it doesn't annul other things that other companies have.
Absolutely, I think very well put. In terms of both are required, the energy and how do companies manage this really in terms of having the energy as well as having old world culture and practices and norms and so on and so forth.
So it's all coming to some of the things that we spoke. For example, if you go to high performing companies, for example, I know a little bit of TCS, there you will find high performance teams know the well-being profile. The team leader will know how to speak, when and what work to give to whom, and where the person is. So it's not to expect the great from everyone because it's humanly impossible. So through tools that they use, like I don't know whether Arvind is on the call. He is always like the LA Marekai. He is an expert of many things. He can say more, but he is also an expert in well-being, in MBTI, and so on and so forth. So yes, the companies use tools, and there's an intuitive way of learning also. People watching seniors. Many of the seniors may not have learned through tools, but it's through the values that get combined. The decisions that are made, even the options that there were, the decisions are not necessarily what appears the best for an outsider. We sometimes say, why is this decision being taken? Sometimes they choose the second or the third option in the interest of a longer term value. So when people watch this over a period of time, it burns into their mind, and through examples they're able to manifest. While the newcomers have the benefit of accelerated learning through tools like what we spoke.
Wonderful. Mr. Nag Bhushan, also, from my own personal experience, because I served in the Navy, and something that was very important was emotional resilience.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you would actually sort of break down if you did not have that emotional or that mental toughness to survive on board ships for long periods of time and so on. And now when I see a lot of younger people, I feel that, and I hope I'm wrong, but I feel that that is a component that is in short supply. What is your point of view of having gone through several years of work and so on and so forth? And how important do you think is emotional resilience?
No, it's extremely important. It's in line with what we also briefly discussed today. We spoke of emotional quotient, we spoke of adversity quotient. In fact, emotional resilience is a combination of these two in a conceptual manner. There's life will always be better. There's always hope. There's optimism. So every company, every team is going to face problems. Now, if the North Pole is not clear, then the team is likely to be disbanded, misguided, so on and so forth. So the belief in the broader aspect, the purpose of life, the optimism filled with the confidence that you can turn it around is extremely important. And you hit the nail on the head. Many talents, they burn out, they lose out because they expect perfection on the board. There's no perfect board in life. Even the auto cycle that we spoke about, or that we learn in IT engines, has to be modified to make it a practical engine. So sometimes students or people, including me, we take more time to understand that the difference between the theory and the practice. Theory is extremely important. Everything in life, everything that is practical has a theoretical background. But when the spark jumps from here to here, there is a little bit of understanding that comes through intuitive listening, observing, and in the process of jumping, there will be failures. And we need to ride through the failures to show that emotional resilience.
So wonderful, and I think you have touched upon several areas of great importance for youngsters, as well as, of course, older people. And I hope all our young friends here could take away many of the messages much of the messages that you have sort of shared with them today, in terms of how to build a quality life, both at work as well as in careers, and then personal as well. You also talked about, very importantly, something that we forget: a financial quotient.
Yes.
I think many people of our generation were a little laissez-faire, I think, with financial quotient, and then paid the price later. But I'm pleased to see that you talked about financial quotient. We also have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who's the chairman of BITES, with us on this platform. It's an honor and privilege to have Dr. Murthy attending a session. He's an extremely busy man. So, sir, would you like to share a few words before we conclude?
Yeah, thank you. I take this opportunity to thank Nag Bhushan Mysore for taking time off to talk to us about the life and the various quotients which play a role in shaping up the career. I'm sure the students and the participants in this audience would strongly benefit from whatever the input that he has provided. I think there's a very tough topic to talk about, because not going to be so easy to convince, because each one of us have our own opinions, our own takes on each of the parameters that are being said. I think Nag Bhushan covered it really well. He took a middle path. If you take either of the two paths, it's always lead to a lot of discussions, a lot of kind of arguments in saying that what you are saying is not the right one. I think he took a balanced approach. Sure, the inputs given in this lecture were really good, and I request him to take time off his busy schedule once again to come and talk to us about some of the things which he not able to cover today. I think it's a huge topic where each one can be expanded to any amount of time.
Absolutely.
I think probably we will have one more interactive session. Bytes will be extremely happy to organize one more depending upon his availability. And also thank Professor Nagaraj Rao and his team for taking the responsibility of organizing this lecture. I think Bytes does only the connection. I think in this case, Arvind Srinivas did the connection and connected us to Nag Bhushan myself. And then I went to Captain Nagaraj Rao to help us out to organize this. I think good number of participants were there. Everybody has benefited from this. I'm extremely happy. I think I joined 5-10 minutes late, but after that, went through the whole lecture. It was really good. Really good. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Nag Bhushan, while you were speaking, while the Honorable Vice Chancellor was speaking, we have one last question, which I think I would like you to have a look at. You know, the number of girl students entering our classrooms are actually rising exponentially. So
Good.
actually, we're about 50-50 now in the MBA program. And there's a question. So if you have to address the female section of society and the girl students, in terms of quotient, what would you tell them actually? Would there be any specific advice that you could give them from your
First of
experience?
all, yes, I'm extremely happy at this turn of events. I have always believed that the girl student is far superior than a boy student. In many of the questions that I spoke, I think the girls have a natural strength. You know, especially the emotive skills that I spoke about. They beat the skills that are needed for the industry, and they should not suppress it. It's very important. Um, I thought about what could be the non-facts about the subject. When I say non-fact, it's all the emotive aspect. Why is the problem there? So while they're great at everything that the academics will want them to be it machine learning, Java programming, or anything like that, I think they have a natural advantage in the various portions that I spoke about, and that they should preserve and grow them, and they demonstrate it, bring it to the table, so that they learn, they get the advantage that they deserve.
Right. Thank you so much. In fact, my advice to most of my girl students is do not try to behave like men.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
but because you're right, I think they have a lot of natural strengths, and they should play to them, and make progress and so on. So as we conclude this wonderful discussion and presentation from Mr. Nagabhushan Mysore, I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Mukti, my colleague, Professor Arvind Srinivas, Dr. Jasma Balasangameshwara, who actually sort of coordinated this entire activity.
Oh, sure.
My IT specialist, Mr. Mohammad Imtiaz, who's always there putting this together, and of course my faculty, other faculty colleagues, and students who have participated today, both from engineering, MBA, and executive MBA. Thank you so much for being here. And Mr. Nag Bhushan, like the Honorable Vice Chancellor said, we will hope to have you again with us, virtually, and maybe once the pandemic ends,
Yes.
physically in class. And we wish you the very best, and thank you so much.
It will be my pleasure. We have taken so much from educational institutions like yours. It will be my pleasure if I can give back a little bit of what I can, and look forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.